Tremendous here, and I got another book review here for you. This one is called Damsel's Distress. It's written by John Malkin. It was presented, and it lists itself on Amazon as science fiction, but the author did reach out to me. He was very up forward about this, or straightforward about this, however you want to put it, and said, hey, listen, I'd like it if you took a look at my book, but I want you to understand that there is some romance and erotica, some BDSM, stuff like that. There is that stuff on this in this report. I am going to go over stuff like that. I'm not going to get into graphic detail because that's not my style, but if that's not your cup of tea, this book review isn't for you. So turn it off, catch the next one, go watch an old one, but this is your warning. Fair enough, there's going to be some dirty talk in here because the book is dirty. There's also going to be talk of slavery, sex slavery, stuff like that, kidnapping. This is topics covered in the book extensively. So if, again, not your cup of tea, turn this off. I heavily encourage you to turn this off. Go watch something else. This book was published back in July 23rd of 2022, and it's exactly 360 pages. So if you're still here, let's get to it. So here's my spoiler-free review. No matter what I say, no matter what I think, no matter what the rating is I gave for this particular book, I encourage everyone who's interested to go out, check out the book themselves. The link is in the description below. Please check it out. Please let me know what you think, and we can have a conversation about it in the comments section. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Am I nuts? Is it a combination of them? Come back. Let me know what you think. Love to have a discussion. So the main characters in this book are a Captain Alberto Peterson and an Elizabeth Bella Di Napoli. She's got like 8 different names in this book, but that is more or less her proper name. She's got an extra last name. She takes on a different what's it called? Identity later on in the book and stuff like that. It's a lot of it, but basically her name is Bella. That's how she's referred to, but the author changes up her name a lot throughout the book. It can get a little confusing sometimes, but once you have all 15 of her names straight in your head, it's pretty easy to follow. Or at least figure out who she is. The plot in a nutshell is Alberto is a sole crew in his little decommissioned military scout ship, and he runs around from system to system, scavenging, mining, and selling stuff. He's a loner. He's a former military person, former Federation guy, with a dark past, because of course he is, and he runs around the universe all by his lonesome with his AI George, and George is awesome, so I don't want to hear any negative things about George. He finds this escape pod, and Bella's inside of it. She's unconscious inside of a med pod that's on 1% power. He rescues her, pulls the ship for scrap, and then her identity and what happens to her leads to an adventure that basically they investigate a kidnapping and sex trade ring. But not really. It's a little weird. I think the story kind of gets away from the author a little bit in parts. It's we'll get into it obviously throughout this review. But consensual slavery is a thing. Sex slaves are common. And non-consensual slavery, especially sexual slavery, is very common in this world too, in this universe. So yeah, and it's our universe. It's in the future. I think it's like 2600s or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty far out there in the future. We're all over the universe doing horrible things. But the closer you get to Earth, there is a Federation with one of the most useless military organizations I've ever seen depicted in writing, but it's really not about them. It's about Alberto and Bella. The cover, I have no problem with it. The cover, it definitely catches your attention. That is supposed to be Bella. That is obviously supposed to be Alberto. I have no issue with the cover at all. It shows a space station. There's 3 or 4 different space stations in this. The only problem I have is Chandler's Universe Book 1. I get where they're going with it. It is a It is a series of stories he plans on writing and he's going to link them all together as Chandler's universe. But the thing about it is that the Chandler's thing in the story, and this is a small spoiler, is like a Bucky's or a Walmart. It's like a superstore that's on every space station that are all connected somehow, and it doesn't really click. I don't. I guess for lack of a better way to put it, I don't like it. It doesn't make any sense why you would name your series after basically futuristic Walmart. Anyway, that's a gripe. That's an itty bitty nitpick. But yeah, the Chandlers, it isn't supposed to be possessive. There's multiple Chandlers all over the universe in stations, and they're your go-to for supplies. Again, I don't fully understand it. They do run into Chandler's shops a couple of times, but they're really kind of pointless. Like it's a supply store. It could have been a White Hen or a 7-Eleven. It just doesn't click. But to each our own. Again, this is me griping. This is me nitpicking, and I apologize. The editing in this book, I'm guessing, I'm making an assumption here. I think this book is self-edited. It's really, really bad. Grammar, flow, punctuation, word usage, misspellings, they're rampant in this book. It's really bad. I get the feeling, and I don't know, I did talk to the author via email, and it's weird because in our emails, in the forenote, in the in the afterthought, like the prologue type of thing, when the author's just talking to you, like as the author, the English is fine, the word is fine, everything is good, but the actual story, there's a lot of repeating themselves. I must take you to the space station so that we can find out what happened to you. So I will take you to the station to find out what happened to you because we need to find out what happened to you in the space station. I'm not exaggerating. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly the kind of stuff that happens. There's probably, no exaggeration, 40 pages that could be taken out of this book if they would just take out all the redundancies. We'll get into that in a minute, but an editor would catch all this. An editor would notice all this. There's a lot of copy-paste where you're rereading something that you read 8-9 pages ago because they didn't delete it all the way. There's wrong word usage. There's differentiation. When you should have used a plural, they use a singular. When they use a singular, they should use a plural. There's a lot of slang and things that are said just slightly wrong. It's like, wow, let's raise the roof. It was like, let's raise up the ceiling. That is actually just an example. That's not an exact one, but that's my point. It's jarring. It takes you out of the flow. It throws things off, and an editor would have caught this. I feel like maybe this was self-edited. This book, it would get a whole extra star from me if an editor would just go through it. An independent, outside professional editor could do wonders for this story. The story flow is a little rough because of all the repeat information detailed information that happens every single time a new character is introduced. They have to go over what happened, why they're on this mission, what they're trying to do, and the reasoning for it changes a little bit every time. Not in a major way, but just minor enough that by the time you get to the end of the book, it's like, what the hell are we here for again? Why did we come here? It's like the game of telephone. You get the general message, but there's so many extras and details forgotten, name changes, location stops. It's frustrating. It reads like a really good first draft, and I wouldn't say really good, like a good first draft. And again, they have the same conversations over and over and over, and it's frustrating and makes it a little difficult to read. So the pros, The science fiction stuff, when the author focuses on the science fiction stuff, it's actually pretty decent. It's cool. The ship, the different people they run into, the different organizations, the technology, how the ship works, how Alberto is who he is. The mafia's in this, although they don't call him that anymore. They call it a corporation, but it's the mafia. I'm sorry. Quit walking around that. It's the mafia. I get the feeling that the author is either Italian or really, really wishes he was. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things, but there's a heavy Italian feel to everything, but just a few degrees off of a bullseye, you know? But at the same time, this world that they've created, this universe that the author has created, feels cool, like somewhere you would want to explore, somewhere you would want to check out. It's a little dark. Like I said, slavery, especially sexual slavery and stuff like that. If you are a woman in this world, this is not a place to visit, especially if you're attractive in the least. There's a lot of sex slaves. Slavery is legal, consensual outside of the Federation, and you're a woman, you're a sex slave. Just accept it. There doesn't seem to be any two ways about it. And everybody in power, with the exception of like one or two people, want to do sex stuff to you. A lot. It's almost not insulting, but immature in a way, just the way people react to seeing a pretty woman. It's creepy. The military aspect is cool, has a touch of realism to it. I would not be surprised to find out that the author has military experience, just by the terms and the way they kind of understood stuff, or knows somebody who has direct military experience. It was interesting to see that. The universe, like I said, it feels large. It feels like somewhere you could get lost. I want to explore this universe. And George, his AI, is great. George is the best character in this entire book. He doesn't get a whole lot of page time, but when he's on there, it's cool. It's like the computer from Star Trek. Any of them, pick one. When they go computer, whatever voice answers, that's George. It's cool. I'm a huge Star Trek buff. Fan, I should say, and I like George. I like George a lot. Nobody says anything bad about George. The cons, I mean, let's go ahead and say what it is. Slavery. No, I'm not one of those soapbox individuals or anything like that, but slavery is a touchy subject, and the author of this book rubs it in your face every other page. It's Bella volunteers to be a slave. We'll get to that in the spoiler-filled one. These are minor spoilers, but Bella volunteers to be Alberto's slave, and he's all for it. And oh my, are they for it? And there's no abuse. There's no abuse, no physical abuse or anything like that by Alberto, but there's a bit of rape. It's in this day and age, the author is either really, really brave or really, really needs to get his finger on the pulse of, read the room type of situation. It's something else. We'll get into it in the spoiler-filled reviews. Editing, I've already been over. I'm not going to keep beating that horse. The overall plot is kind of weak, and there's a reason for that. The author's distracted. In my opinion, this book is two separate stories that are trying to mesh into one, and they never quite do it. There's the sci-fi story of them trying to find this evil group that's kidnapping girls and using them for sex slaves and ransoming to control corporations, which we'll get into why that doesn't make any sense in a little bit. But then there's the other story, the erotica, the sex stuff, the constant sex stuff too. It's like you took two teenagers, gave them leather and a spaceship, and said, remember to take your hormone pills every day, twice a day, and they're 1,500 milligrams a pop, and then just recorded everything they said, because it gets childish. It gets ridiculous after a while. These are supposed to be, the one guy is much older, 50 Shades of Grey. Let's just say it. It's 50 Shades of Grey in a spaceship, but with less sense, and it's too bad. It reads like a good first draft. This needs a lot more work, a lot more polish, and the author needs to figure out where his primary focus is. If it's the erotica stuff, then drop the crazy, spy stuff and focus on the sex stuff. If it's going to be sci-fi, then drop the sex stuff. Not all of it, obviously, but, drop the constant reminder of it. No woman in the history of womanhood has talked about sex as often or as much as Bella does, and in such an immature, almost virgin way. It's a little ridiculous. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because just as you start getting into the plot, or for me anyway, just as I started getting into the plot of the sci-fi stuff, the weird sex conversation would start happening again. And I have no problem with there being intimacy and sex and stuff like that, even kind of the wilder stuff in a story, as long as it adds to the relationship or anything. But it feels like a penthouse forum. I don't know, I'm aging myself here, but it feels like one of those stories that are just thrown in there from some liar. It doesn't click. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. At one point, there's literally a scene where they're like, oh, well, according to the slave contract, we have to have sex 3 times a week. Not making that up. That's in the slave contract. Bella's edition, by the way. And so for 2 hours, they go at it. I'm going to put myself out here right now. 2 hours would straight up kill me. I'm sorry. I don't know porn stars that go 2 hours having sex with each other and don't need a blood transfusion afterwards. After a while, don't you get kind of bored? I'm sorry. I'm probably doing it wrong. Feel free to blast me in the comments, but 2 hours. That's a lot of crying. I'm sorry. It's just stuff like that that doesn't add to the story, and there's a story here. That's the biggest travesty. When you get to the story, when you get there, when the author focuses on the sci-fi and the story and stuff like that, it gets really interesting, it gets really entertaining, and then it's like he remembers, oh yeah, I've gotta talk sex stuff now, and it just gets shoehorned in, and it's like, what are you doing? Why is this all of a sudden happening? It is so abrupt and jarring in the middle of a dialogue and the dialogue's not that great, that it's like, okay, why are we talking about sex all of a sudden? It's not a good transition. It's not helping the story. You use it like you would seasoning. Too much and you're going to ruin the meal. There's also the biggest problem that I have is there's no reason for Bella to be a slave. They go over it 18 times. I have notes. 18 times they discuss and explain why Bella decided that she needed to be a slave. And it runs the gamut from her needing to prove herself, her needing to get something, her being selfish, her having the power, which doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, it doesn't. To her being manipulated into it by a high-ranking military official, to her just feeling like it was a good idea, to her just wanting to get laid, and the captain rejected her because she had a sex collar on. It's all over the place, and it's unnecessary. Not one time in the entire story is her being a slave required. Ever. Zero reason. In fact, most of the stuff they run into, the captain has already been involved with these individuals, and he did it without a slave. He was able to have interactions with everyone, everything, without a slave. It's fantasy fulfillment, and it's very poorly veiled, and that's aggravating. If you're going to do something as controversial as this, fine, I guess, but have a damn good reason, because it's kind of pushed, oh, well, they're trying to hide her identity. I'm going to raise the biggest BS flag on that, period, because they have documentation, and everyone that they run into know exactly who she is. They know who she is. They know what she is. They know it's ridiculous. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't hide her identity or anything. Everybody knows who she is, without fail. The slave part is fantasy fulfillment in the worst possible way. In my opinion, and it's not my story, this is just my opinion, it needs to be removed completely. There's zero purpose for it other than a knockoff on the plot of 50 Shades of Grey. And she wasn't a slave. She just entered into a sex contract. Anyway, the ending, after all that, after 340 pages, you get to the end game, and it's super convenient. Again, this is a bigger spoiler, but it's nonsense. What the captain does, this seasoned, experienced military captain does, Alberto, is quite literally a song and dance to distract the bad guys, and it works. And that was the worst, not the worst, but that was really bad. That was a horrible ending to this story. The story deserves better. The reader deserved better. I don't like it. And in the end, it doesn't really solve the problem. Like, what they came out there to do, they don't succeed. But they act like everybody was applauding, and they go off into the sunset. It doesn't. No, the problem was not resolved, and that's aggravating. So in the end, and this might surprise you, but in the end, I ended up giving the story not 1, not 2, but 3 out of 5 stars. And I know all the griping I've been doing, all the complaining I've been doing, it seemed more like I was heading towards half a star or 0 stars. And I get that. But for every part of this book I didn't like, there was a part of the book that I really did like. The sci-fi story is there. The foundation, the plot, the world, the technology, George, this guy Hiram, I'll get into that in a minute. I don't want to give away any spoilers in this section. The military stuff, the accuracy of some of it, the way the captain acts in the beginning of the book, and he has little moments throughout the book. It's just there's a lot of really good stuff. So every time I would run into a part of the book I didn't like, there'd be a part of it almost right after that was really cool and I really got into and I really enjoyed. And no, not the dirty sex stuff. Calm down, weirdos. But my point is, this book is, for me, the perfect example of a 3-star book. It's not bad. It's not good. It's average. It's right there. It's the perfect 50-50 book. And I'm all about integrity. I'm all about being honest. There's a lot about this, but there's 180 pages worth of this book I disliked, and there's 180 pages of this book that I actually really enjoyed. I couldn't give it any lower than a 3-star, and I couldn't give it any higher than a 3-star, so that's why it's there. And I think this book earned that 3-star very well. Here's where I'm going to get heavy into the spoilers, so if you don't want any, I highly encourage you to go down to the link in the description, purchase the book for yourself, read it, come back, watch this part, and then we can go over it together and compare notes and see if I'm crazy, if I nailed it, or if there's somewhere in between that I landed. More than likely somewhere in between. All right, so it starts off with Alberto flying around in his decommissioned scout ship, basically tracking this comet that he wants to try to scavenge for, or mine for resources that he can sell in order to keep doing his life. He's been flying around in space all by himself with nothing but his AI George, who's awesome, helping him out for about a decade. So dude's been antisocial for a while. Doesn't seem to have any real tics, but whatever. Maybe he's got a really good entertainment system and George is good company. He finds the escape vessel. It's all shot to Swiss cheese. There's a dead guy in the pilot seat, and Bella is in the stasis pod, a med pod, in the back. That it's kind of weird because you find out at the end of the story that it was her cousin that shot the whole thing up. Yeah, I know, spoilers. It's actually, it's kind of obvious, but at the same time, it's a good twist type thing, and it does give a little, soap opera drama to the whole thing. It's well done. It's well done. I don't have a problem with it. But it's weird. My problem with this, though, is her cousin had the guy who got shot up and killed in the driver's seat kidnap Bella and these other 11 or 12 girls, and they're all rich girls who are in college and, from money, from power and stuff like that. She's been out there for 12 years, no body or anything like that, and just hard to believe that the cousin the entire purpose of the kidnappings and stuff like that was to capture Bella, because the cousin wanted to rescue her, quote unquote, which would somehow make their director, the person in charge of their family, allow him to marry Bella so that he could become a made member of the family. They call it being in the line, in a family line, but basically he becomes a wise guy or a made man. I don't fully understand how that works. How rescuing the cousin gives you marital rights to him. It's never really explained, but incest and keeping it in the family is one of the tropes that this book explores. So Bella is a young, athletic, rich, white Italian woman. I'm pretty sure she's Italian. She's around college age. She's, I would say, 23, 22, somewhere in there. She's talking about going to university and getting her degrees and stuff. So she hasn't graduated from college, but she seemed to be close, and she wanted to get her whatever, the like PhD or doctorate or something like that. She wanted to get, she's an academic. But it's a little weird because they describe her, the author describes her as blonde hair, blue eye, pale or fair skin. And I'm like, okay, so she's a white girl. Got it. No big deal. Like I said, 12 years ago, presumed dead by her family, but her grandfather is basically the head of the family. And while they call it like a corporation and he's a director, he's a futuristic godfather. Simple as that. Simple as that. He is. He's in the mafia. She's a part of the mafia. It's super weird the way they do the family lines and the way he dances around saying that they're mobsters, they're mafia. But I mean, they've gone legit. It wasn't since our time, the 21st century, that they were in any kind of criminal activity. But they're into a whole bunch of criminal activity. She's like, oh, we're in shipping and building, which is the stupidest answer she could have possibly given. But no. She's part of the mafia. Her grandfather's the godfather, and she calls him Poppy, which, as far as Google has shown me, I was pretty sure about this, but I Googled it to be sure. Poppy means daddy. And it's kind of on the nose because it turns out that her grandfather is really her biological father. Yeah, incest is toyed with. But that being said, she hasn't done any like, her mother didn't have sex with her father. She was trying to get pregnant with her husband, couldn't get the genetic thing to work, and so her father, Belle's grandfather, Poppy, donated his genetic material to his daughter, Bella's mother, so that Bella could be born. Which I'm not sure if that makes her mother's stepmom or it's super weird. But yeah, basically she's the non-sex created incest baby from her grandpa and her mother. You see, this is the weird stuff that's in the book. I don't like this. It's not necessary. It's not needed. It's not cool. It's not interesting. It's gross. It's gross. I know Grandpa didn't have sex with his daughter. I get that. But to even donate genetic material, now, I don't think it was like sperm in a turkey baster or anything like that. I believe the story implies, it doesn't exactly describe it, which is good, but it's basic. It seems like there was a lab and his genetic material mixed with her genetic material, and then Bella was quote unquote conceived, mom carried to term, and delivered a semi-healthy daughter. I guess she was in the NICU for a while and stuff like that, but she obviously survives. It's weird. The whole tangle of family and stuff like that, it's unnecessary. Why couldn't he just be the grandfather of a corporation, her grandfather in the corporation that he was gonna turn over to her, and the cousin wanted her out of the picture, or to be the husband, because men dominate in this story. Men are definitely the primary, women are a step above second class, we're gonna say, and that's being generous. I just don't understand what the incest had to be there for. But I can say that for a lot of things in this book. So when he gets her out of the med pod, he finds she's got a slave collar on. And this slave collar is made by some mystical corporation, some evil mystical corporation. And they are evil mystical corporation. The slave collar not only makes it so that she has to obey, but it also starts working on her subliminally, conditioning her. In this situation, the guy that kidnapped her, he kind of raped the other girls. There's no detail, thank goodness, but he uses the collars he puts on the other girls to force them to have sex with him. He didn't do that to Bella. Instead, he was prepping her to be some sort of masterpiece sex slave, and made it so that basically whenever she had clothes on, due to the slave collar and her conditioning, her body would have an allergic reaction, and she would like feel like she was on fire to rip the clothes off of her. So when he finds her and he wakes her up and stuff like that, she's naked. And she's like, "Where are my clothes?" And he's like, "Go ahead, put some on, see what happens." She puts them on, burns real bad. And he's like, "Yeah, that wasn't me. That's the collar. We got to get that off you somehow." So they work on that. They talk that through, but he gives her the option to wear like a blanket because she can't wear clothes. They don't really know each other. He's so Alberto is a retired military officer, and probably closer to 40 than he is 30, if not in his 40s, while Bella is fresh into her 20s at the oldest. So he's got this girl, and she's not like a Hollywood beauty or anything like that. The book is very clear on that. She's athletic. She played rugby competitively. She ran and stuff like that. She was more of an athletic body, but I mean, she's still a bombshell. I mean, bottom line is she's not the normal trope, but she's still the trope. you know. So she's got a great body on her. And so he tells her, though, Alberto isn't a pervert right away. He's like, "Hey," he goes, "you can't wear clothes. I've got a blanket over here. You can wear that, no problem. But, just, you can be in this room for as long as you want, coming out when you're ready." And so Bella, I don't, in some sort of mental gymnastics out of a Stephen King novel, she convinces herself, with a little bit of help from the collar, I'll grant the author that much, that she should be naked. That wearing the blanket is a sign of weakness, and this captain she has to win over so that he won't hurt her, abuse her, rape her, or throw her out an airlock. If she can make herself appealing to him, then she'll do that. So she doesn't wear the blanket. She just walks around this ship naked. He's the only one on the ship anyway, so at least it's private. But it's fantasy wish fulfillment is really what it is. It doesn't add anything to the story. It doesn't improve or further her character at all, other than to make her look like a complete moron. But yeah, yeah, and so this slave collar not only is making it so that she can't wear clothes, but it's also conditioning her to want to be a slave, and basically a sex slave. And so at one point she kind of prostrates herself in front of the captain and begs him more or less to have sex with her. And Alberto refuses. He said it would be inappropriate. It's against fleet regulations. Even though he's retired, he's still a military man. He refuses. He declines her and is firm about it. It was a very cool part of the story. Honestly, the way everything was going, I didn't think that's how it was going to happen. I thought we were going to have our first very, very odd consensual sex scene, and I was not looking forward to it. I got to be honest with you. That made me uncomfortable. So when Alberto said, "No, no, not with this collar on, maybe not even after it's off, no." And Bella gets upset. She takes it hard. She feels rejected and scorned, and she gets mad. So she goes and they get to this station eventually. They put her in a tent or whatever, the medical facility on this station, while Alberto talks with. He knows everybody. He knows everybody in the universe that's important. The commissar that he talks to, the guy who's in charge of this base, and happens to also be in charge of the intel wing of the fleet, of the Federation, or whatever you want to call it, is an old Navy buddy of his, an old fleet buddy of his. Later on, when they have to go and talk to this other, anybody they need to talk to, Alberto either knows them personally or has dealings with them personally in the past. The universe is a huge place. It's this big, awesome open world, but he knows everybody and everything. It's like, it would have been cool if he didn't know so many people, especially considering he's been a loner for 10 years. No friends, no family, nothing. But man, the guy knows everybody. Everybody. Everywhere he goes, he knows who to go talk to. He knows how to deal with them. And he's got personal dealings with them, whether it was they served together or they fought together. But it was not like just we were in the same battle. We were on the same chair. It's just really weird the way this guy knows everybody, and he's not like a politician or something. Super weird. But anyway, they get the collar removed, and she's free to go. Right? They're gonna send people to go and look into the people that kidnapped her, figure out what's going on. Her family, they contacted her family. They got a hold of the cousin. At the time, they didn't know this, that was the mastermind behind her kidnapping and stuff like that. So he tells them, no, Bella's dead. You have an imposter. And then immediately supposedly they sent this transmission to Old Earth. They're nowhere near Old Earth, but the next 2 hours, they try to kill her with a bomb. And of course it doesn't work because for no reason explained whatsoever, they made a clone of her. They killed the clone, so they made another clone to pass off as her so they could say, nope, they hurt her, but they didn't kill her, and we're trying to return her to her family in order to try to keep the attention on that. It does not work. Everybody knows she's a fake and goes after the real Bella. Everybody. I literally, Boy Scouts show up and try to take her down. No, okay, not literally, but you know what my point, everything they do to try to obfuscate who she is does not work at all in any way, shape, or form. So she's free to go. She can go home. They'll put her in protective custody, whatever she wants to do. She chooses instead to become Alberto's slave. Slavery is legal in the Federation. As long as both people are consenting and adults, then the terms are, there are some, default terms, but then either of them, as long as they both agree to it, can add whatever terms they want to the contract. Then they go in front of a judge, kind of like a shotgun wedding, and this particular one is a year-long contract. It expires at the end of the year unless they come back and re-up it together. It's super weird, just how much detail goes into this slave contract thing. I know it's a trope off of 50 Shades of Grey. I get that. I know exactly what the author was going for. Doesn't mean it was a good idea. Stephen King had a kid sex orgy in it. Doesn't mean that they had to put it in the movie. Doesn't mean that it had to be in new iterations of the book. And you know what? They made the right call and didn't do that. This shouldn't be in the story. If it added to the story, you might have an argument. If it built on the characters, you might have an argument, but it does nothing. Nothing for the story, nothing for the character. It does not help them at all throughout their entire adventure, and it's a good adventure. It does nothing. It is fantasy wish fulfillment, and in my opinion, the author needs to choose. Are you telling an erotic tale or are you telling sci-fi? Because what we're getting here is two stories that are trying to mesh into one, and it is not working. Both of those stories are so polar opposite of each other that they hurt each other when trying to be combined. This is wrong. It just does not work. So everybody's on board with this. There's all these military people, men, women, they're all like, this is wonderful. Literal applause at their lawyer thing after it's all done, and celebration. And this young, independent, powerful, rich girl who's used to doing her own thing and is like, nope, I don't need no man to tell me what to do, is like, yes, master, slave Bella will do your bidding. It's super weird, and it is not in character. It's wrong. It's just broken. It's fantasy wish fulfillment at its worst, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. There was no reason for it. They try to say it's because she got mad that he rejected her for sex, and she wanted to show him that she gets what she wants, even if she has to become your slave for a year to have sex with you. If you understand that, please put it in the comment section below so that I can try to wrap my mind around it, because it is so taboo to me. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Then she also tries to say it's for her protection, so they don't know who she is, so they can give her a new identity. But they did the contract in her real identity, and they did another contract in her fake identity. So there goes that plan. She's linked up to the same guy in both of her names. So even if that was the case, they don't need to make her his slave in order to change her identity. It's ridiculous. It's the whole premise is broken. There's no good reason, there's no good foundation, there's no good setup, and there's no payoff. There's no reason for her to be this guy's slave other than fantasy fulfillment. And that would belong in an erotic story. This is, as you can see from the cover, as you can see from the description, it is supposed to be a science fiction story. But what we get is a science fiction setting with an erotic body, or erotic core. And it's just, in my opinion, mispresented to a reader. A reader that thinks they're going to get sci-fi is going to be, well, I mean, depending on the reader, maybe they'll like it. Because I do believe there is a definite audience for this kind of story, but it needs to be presented correctly, in my opinion. So anyway, like I said, the consensual slavery is 100% legal. It becomes a year-long contract. Non-consensual slavery is a common thing, too, outside of the Federation. So if you're in the Federation and want to become a slave, you just need to judge a contract in 20 minutes. If you're outside of the Federation in the universe and somebody wants to make you a slave, then you're a slave. And they really don't do anything about it. Being a woman in this universe, kind of have limited options. Oh, and by the way, women do see Bella in her slave role, butt naked, prostrating, saying the whole slave Bella this, slave Bella that, and everyone has the same reaction. Awestruck, super attracted to her, like a teenager seeing a naked, a member of the sex they're attracted to, butt naked for the first time. Everyone, seasoned guards, outliers, smugglers, military members. Bella charms all of them. She does not fail to charm anyone she runs into simply because she's naked. It's, I don't like the erotic part of this story. So yeah, one of the things that this story does is it recaps constantly. There's probably 40 pages of recap in this story where they just go over stuff they've already done, and it makes sense, I guess, if it was a real world thing and you're telling somebody what's going on as you meet them or whatnot. But the reader's here. This is not real life. This is a story for the reader, and the reader doesn't need to recap every single time they meet a new person, or just randomly when the author needs to fill 4 pages full of text why she decided to become a slave again, or why they're on the mission, or what they're going to do. And there's a lot of like echo when it comes to the dialogue and stuff like that. We have to find where your ship is by going to this station, so we got to go to the station. At this station we'll find out where your ship is, because the ship will be known at the station. I'm not exaggerating. It's like that constantly. It just like re-emphasizes the point with echo, and it's irritating after a while. But even worse is the constant recaps. So, for example, part of the problem with the recaps is every time they recap it, a detail changes. One of the reasonings, one of the excuses of whatever they were doing changes. So, like, why she wanted to be a slave for Alberto. It's to prove that she can get what she wants from him, meaning sex. He rejected her for sex, and so by becoming her slave and forcing them, because she puts in the contract that they have to have sex 3 times a week minimum, or more at master's discretion, but at least 3 times. Okay, to find her kidnappers, to find the other girls that were kidnapped. Those are the 3 main points that she makes whenever she has to explain why she chose to be a slave. But then there's all these other random reasons that get thrown in there and then are never touched on again. It's like the author knew that the story was flimsy and they were trying to throw excuses out there in order to justify the fantasy fulfillment. And that's really, it didn't need to be addressed after the first time. Just, okay, you've already explained it, move on. But the different reasons were like, I want my family to be proud of me. I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. I wanted to prove to you that I could do it. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be a slave. I wanted to have the power to choose to put myself, or to make myself a slave. these aren't me making this stuff up. These were the excuses. These were the reasonings given. And they were the random ones that went away the next time she gave the reasoning. It was really frustrating and stupid because none of it made any sense. None of it coincided with the character or the story, and none of it helps. Again, being Alberto's slave in the story serves zero purpose. At no point whatsoever at any time did her being a slave help them in their mission. Anytime that she needed to be there, she got naked, and she didn't need to be a slave to do that. Okay? She didn't need to be a slave to meet anyone that they needed to meet. She didn't need to be a slave to be on his ship. She didn't need to be a slave to get a new identity. There's only reason that the author made her a slave is for the erotic portion of this story. It was fantasy wish fulfillment, and it gets worse. Right after he made her a slave, he takes her over to this establishment called New You. Bella was described as a fair-skinned or pale-skinned white woman, basically, with blonde hair, blue eyes, okay? She had an athletic body. She didn't have enormous bosoms. She didn't have an enormous butt or anything like that. None of your stereotypes. She was an athletic woman, rugby player, attractive, but not your typical Hollywood type of, stereotypical beauty or anything like that. He takes her to New You. They make her skin dark. They make her hair dark. And they change her blue eyes to brown. Then they enhance her breasts, make them much bigger, and give her a big butt. My advice, my strong recommendation to the author on this is to really think about this scene. Making a woman, even though she volunteered, it was in the book, it's her idea, but making a woman a slave is controversial enough. I mean, read Society. It's 2022. The word slave is kind of a four-lettered word. Alone, okay? But making your white slave into a dark-skinned, dark-haired, brown-eyed woman with stereotypical big boobs and a big butt sends a message that people are going to read and probably not be flattered by. I don't want to say too much more about this. I think I've made my point. But again, if you think I'm wrong, by all means, comment section away. We can have a debate on this one. But my advice is to really look at this scene close. Go ahead and look at social opinions on this particular subject real quick. And probably remove this scene from the book altogether and burn the computer it was written on. I'm leaving it at that. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm hypersensitive. Maybe I need to calm down and relax. I can totally accept that. But to me, the message you're sending here is I believe it's gonna catch you some flack. So enough about that. I'm not going to touch on that anymore. But one of the things about this book is the sex. You're reading two different stories. You're reading a story that's erotica, and you're reading a story that's science fiction. The erotica story is not good. The sex scenes that he describes are juvenile. I'm trying to be nice here. They're juvenile. The sexy talk that they do back and forth, the flirting, is cringy. An example of this is they're reiterating why, for like the third or fourth time at this point, why Bella decided to be his slave. This isn't the first time they talked about it. It's not the last time they talk about it. But in this situation, they're on the ship and they're going over it again. Why she chose to be his slave. Why she wanted to be his slave. And she tells him, I want to make my family proud, that I can keep my word, and blah, blah, blah. Again, none of it makes any sense. But also because even though I grew up with a rich, influential, powerful family, I never felt like I belonged. And he walks over and he holds her because, aw, poor Bella. And then he says, maybe that's because you've always belonged here with me. And this 22-ish year old college academic, she is supposed to be smart, she jumps up from him, starts clapping her hands and jumping up and down saying, I belong, I belong, I belong. I'm not exaggerating. This late 30s, early 40s, retired military guy who's been solo for 10 years and is kind of gruff and has seen some stuff and done some things, covers his face in embarrassment, but then peeks through his fingers like a little kid watching a horror movie because her boobs are bouncing as she jumps around. And he's sitting on the chair. He sits down on his captain's chair and goes, wow, those are really bouncy. And she jumps into his lap and bounces her boobs in his face, saying, bouncy, 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 bouncy. And I puked. I'm sorry. If this does it for you, awesome. Awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. Go pick up this book. You're going to love that scene. You're going to read that page until the words are blurred off or the pages stick together. Whichever happens, it's totally up to you. But my point is, the erotic part of this story, the slave master erotica sex stuff, does not work. It's poorly written. It is not good. It doesn't add anything. If anything, it detracts from the story. Romance is fine. Depictions of sex are fine. My series has depictions of sex in it. Not like this, but they do. There is a time and a place that can enhance a story, especially when you're trying to create a relationship between two people that don't exist. I totally get what you were trying to do, but what you did do is so juvenile and so cringy that it makes you nauseous to read it, which is awful, not only because it's awful, but because it kills what is on the foundation a solid, potentially really good science fiction story. This has all the workings, all the makings, all the elements needed to be an amazing science fiction story, and the author has spent so much time focused on these fake girl parts and this master-slave dynamic that it doesn't need. The story benefits for no reason. The plot is not moved forward for any reason by the slave or the sex stuff. The relationship isn't even moved forward by the sex stuff. Nothing about the sex stuff helps the story. And that's the biggest issue I have. Well, okay, not the biggest issue I have, but it's up there in the top 5, okay? The science fiction part of this story, the good part of this story, is crippled by the need of the author to write smut. Dude, take all of that out of there. Take every last bit of sex and master and slave crap out of this book, put it in a new series. I guarantee if you focus on the erotic smut part, I don't care. You could leave their names the exact same. You could call it the holodeck porn logs of Bella the Tramp. I don't care. It could be part of the Chandler spin-off universe, the porn series. You will make $1 trillion on this and have a throng of fans that love this stuff. It could be 80 pages long and you'll never be worried for money again. But this book would benefit so much more if instead of a slave, she became a crew member. That's all she needs to be. He's the captain, she's the ensign. That dynamic is in this story already, so it would not be much of a change, and it would make all the more sense. It would be great. You could have all sorts of PTSD signs from what happens because Alberto had a crew and they all died except for him, and it's super interesting and it's super sad, and you get like a paragraph about that and then it's over. A really interesting part, but because there's no sex in it, because Alberto's not into the necrophilia, well, maybe, I don't know, book 2, we'll see. But my point is, this is fixable, but you need to focus on what kind of story you're trying to write. you've put an erotica light tale into a science fiction story and have killed your science fiction story because you broke your concentration on the better part of your story. That's my opinion. Please, anyone, feel free to buy the book, read it yourself, come back, tell me if I'm crazy or not. Lots of hoops to jump through. Really cool. This guy Hiram is literally an information pawnbroker. You go to him, you ask questions, and he's like, well, so one of the questions is like, who is it that tried to kidnap Bella? I need a name. And the Hiram guy's like, oh, that's a $50 question. And he's like, come on, that's a $20 question. I'm asking for a name. And they haggle, end up at 40, and he gives him the name. It's awesome. Like, this is so cool. Later on, he asks a better question, and the guy's like, oh, that's a good one. He's like, 500 credits for yes or no, 750 for a detailed answer. That is an awesome dynamic. That is an awesome scene. The whole interaction with Hiram is really, really cool. I wish he was a bigger part of the story because I love that. I love that I got the answer, but you're not going to get it for free, and then they haggle about it. It's super cool. One of the other things that I thought was going to be really cool, but unfortunately took a real dark turn. I'm just not into that. Maybe it doesn't hurt the story, but it didn't do anything for me. Is this big 300-year-old demigod, basically, way out in the fringes of space. The location that they go to is literally called like the Way Out there. And they get there, and this guy has this dark beer stout LSD. They call it enlightenment, and if you can drink it up to 3 times. You drink it once and survive, there's a good chance you're going to get some sort of psychic premonition powers. Basically, you get images of stuff, and if you can figure out what the hell they mean, you can figure out the future. If you drink it twice and you survive and you get enlightened again, because there's no guarantee it'll work, your power, whatever it is, gets sharpened a little bit. And if you drink it the 3rd time, basically you have the 3rd eye of Sauron in your forehead and you can see the future, but 99.9 people that drink it the 3rd time just die horribly. So most people drink it twice max and are just happy if they get any kind of what's called enlightenment. Anybody can go out there and do this because it's just at a bar, but yeah, it's just kind of hard to get out there, and it's weird. So Bella and Alberto go out there, they drink the enlightenment, they are messed up beyond all recognition, and they go and talk to this guy. I don't remember his, it's like Ruffalo or something, Rualafo or something. It's a weird name, but he's this big, huge, bald, nasty, like troll dude. And in order to get his answers, and because they do need answers from him and stuff, but in order to get answers, he wants 6 hours alone with Bella for sexy time, and he wants Alberto to go and spend 3 hours with a woman of his choice, where they have to have sex multiple times during that 3 hours, or the deal's off and it'll kill everybody. Yep, doesn't make sense to me either, but that's what we went to. This is fantasy wish fulfillment. See, this is why all this stuff needs to be removed from the book, because it's killing an otherwise really good story. So they go, and of course, big rapey guy, Rualfo, or whatever his name is, rapes Bella for 6 hours, tortures her, beats her, breaks her, kills her. But he's got a med pod that can bring us back to life, can bring her back to life, and he does multiple times. So for 6 hours, he rapes, beats, tortures, and murders her multiple times, bringing her back in a matter of moments with this med pod of plot device, and while Alberto has to go and have sex with the woman that he paid Rualfo with last time he was here. He had to give this woman to Rualfo or whatever, and he turned her into a sex slave. So for 3 hours, he's sitting there having sex with this woman that he gave up as a sex slave, or he gave to this guy so that he'd get answers last time there. Granted, it was with her permission, but I think she had a change of heart. He, of course, Alberto gets the information, gets Bella back, they get back to the ship, Bella tells him what happened, and Alberto has the audacity to be like, how dare he hurt you for 6 hours, torture you, kill you, rape you, I didn't know it was going to be that bad. Dude, you knew exactly what he was going to do, but he does this big, like, fairy tale thing. One day, somehow, some way, I will avenge you and take my vengeance on Rualfo, or whatever the hell his name is. What? You knew exactly what was going to happen. You've been here before. You sold off a girl to him before. Why in the hell are you acting like it's a surprise? He made you go and have sex for 3 hours with the chick that you dropped off last time you were here. And so he swears up, down, and sideways that he's going to find a way to get revenge and get them back and kill Rolfo or whatever the hell his name is and all this stuff. Next chapter, completely forgets about it. By the end of the book, Rolfo's only in there as the guy that helped him. And you know what? He's a jerk, but he's my jerk. All's forgiven. Bella has zero PTSD, trauma, any kind of psychic damage. She remembers all of it. They do say that the enlightened stuff has a way of making you forget what happened while you're there. Oh, no. No. The story brings it up multiple times that Bella remembers what he did to her. They talk about it a couple of times because, recaps. But she gets over it, no problem. In fact, she tries to instigate sex with Alberto quite a bit because you know what? There's nothing that a multiple rape victim wants more than to instigate sex. That's wow. I couldn't. Again, like I said, remove all the sex stuff out of this damn book. Put it in your own erotica novel. Same name, same everything else, but just focus on the erotica in a different novel. You'll be rich forever. There's people that really like that. More power to them. But in this story, it's killing what is otherwise a potentially phenomenal science fiction tale. And I'm really disappointed. In the end, the ending is so disappointing. They finally get back. They go back to Earth. They find Bella's cousin. He, of course, monologues and says everything that's happening. But here's the thing. They come up they have no weapons on them whatsoever, right? Bella and Alberto have been sparring ninja style, doing martial arts in his boat because, nothing makes you a black belt faster than doing 2 months of karate in a spaceship against the same opponent. Nothing makes you better at fighting than that. Period. Zillions of fictional tales will tell you that. It's lazy, it's stupid, and it's wrong. Stop doing that, authors. Everyone out there, stop doing that. Martial arts for 2-3 months, or I did it back when I was a teenager, is not the answer to why your person is suddenly Jet Li. You can't do that. It doesn't make sense. No one's buying it. It's 2022. Do better. So they get up to this thing, right? They get off this elevator, and Bella's cousin Frankie is there with a gun pointed at him, right? There's 3 guys around him, 2 guys with him. They've all got weapons trained on Alberto and Bella. Bella's naked, so immediately all 3 of the guys have the power of boners, so they're completely distracted. These hardened mafia guys that have had more sex than most zip codes. But no, seeing Bella naked, that for some reason turns them into, 16-year-old boys with no hormone control. But what ends up happening is one of the, stupidest endings I've read in a long time. Alberto is doing a cowboy accent for some reason, and holds up his hands and starts literally doing to distract them. Okay? They've told him, march, we're going over here right now. He starts babbling. Alberto starts babbling, doing this 3 paragraphs of dialogue that these mobsters, these people that are planning to kill them both, allow. And they listen to it all. And this full-grown adult is literally doing circus noises at him and literal mumbo-jumbo, literal alakazam, alakazoo, you're gonna feel pain soon. I'm not making that up. I don't rhyme. That's the line. And then Bella, taking that cue, because for some reason that was the cue that she just knew instinctually was it, somersault rolls towards her cousin and karate kicks him in the balls. That's it. That's the ending. That's the big confrontation. He goes down. One of Alberto's buddies, who's in the room as well, shoots non-lethal rounds at the 2 other guards before they can get any kind of a round off. They came here to murder them. And before they can get any kind of round off at Bella or Alberto or do anything, the other guy is able to shoot them both with non-lethal rounds. They all drop, they all get arrested, and then the icing on the cake, the cousin confesses to everything. And who's right there? That's right, Don Poppy. He's right there the whole time. He's heard everything. It's all wrapped up in a neat little bow. Bella becomes the new director of the corporation, because Poppy is sick and he's ready to turn it over to her. She's been gone for 12 years, has no idea how to run a major corporation, but she's my favorite. She's my incest daughter. I want her to run the company, and everyone's going to be cool with that. Everyone's going to be cool with that. Want to know what's even better? She stays being Alberto's slave by her choice. And while at first, Mafia, Godfather Poppy is not happy about it, it's cool though. She's only gonna be his slave in her fake name. In her real name, she'll be the director of this corporation, the godmother, or whatever you want to call her. And that's that. Oh, okay, so you're gonna use a made-up name to be a slave? Yeah, I'm sure everybody will be cool with that. Yeah, that makes sense. And they lived happily ever after. Yeah. So again, I know I complained a lot. I know I bitched a lot. I know I whined about it a lot. And the problem with that is, it's because I know there's a really good sci-fi story in here. I saw it. It's right there. It's just got 3 pounds of smut covering it up, and it's got to be exercised, got to be removed from this story, so that the good story, so that the real talent of this author can shine through. Dude, go watch some porn and then rewrite this one. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be crude, but it's hard. I spent the last 4 days reading this, and it's hard not to be crude. It is a average book. As it stands right now, it needs work. It needs an editor. It needs proofreading. It needs edits bad. It needs a lot of fat cut off of this. And I've made my point very well clear, I believe, at this point. But every time I found something I disliked about the book, I found something that I liked about it. It was almost immediate. One subject to the next. It was always a coin flip. Am I going to like it? Am I going to dislike it? And it was 50-50. There's 180 pages of this book I loved, and 180 pages of this book I didn't love. And that's why it's a 3 out of a 5. This is a average tale that needs work in order for me to actually be able to give it, 3.5 to 5 stars. But it's in there. It needs work, it needs effort, it needs an editor, it needs a proofreader, and the author needs to focus. The author needs to figure out what story they're really trying to tell. Because in this story, they're trying to tell 2, and it's to the detriment of both. I think that this could be a 5-star book if it just went back, if the author would just go back and focus on the science fiction portion. And that's it. Another book review is into history books. I'm sorry if I upset you, offended you. If you're still here by the end of this particular review, I thank you. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope you found it enlightening and entertaining, informative, useful, or, I guess rage-inducing, whatever. I hope you felt something. I meant what I said. I do encourage you to not just take my opinion on it. I do encourage you to use the link in the description below to get the book for yourself. It's on Kindle. It's on Amazon. It's not expensive. Right now, as of this recording, it's currently free. I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited, but when it's not free, I think it's only a few bucks. You can get it. You can read it yourself, and then come back and let me know what you think. Was I correct? Was I wrong? Do I need to be institutionalized? Yes, but you should probably still do some time in a psych ward, whatever, come on back, we'll talk about it, it'll be a blast. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to put them in the comments section below, and as always, thank you.